This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Check out Squarespace through the link in the description below. More about them in a bit. Paris, 1979. It's 3:10 p.m. on the 2nd of November, the Day of the Dead. A 43-year-old man climbs into a BMW parked outside his flat in Porte de Clignancourt. On the passenger seat, his beautiful girlfriend Sylvia is smiling. They're about to leave Paris behind for a relaxing holiday in Normandy. Their little dog, Scoundrel, is excited to join them for the trip. As the man wears his safety belt, he positions two pieces of hand luggage by his feet. Carefully, though. Very carefully. They are two hand grenades with the safety pins partly removed. It's 3:14 p.m. Somewhere else in Paris, police radios crackle and an order is relayed. The target has been identified and it's time to intervene. The man in the BMW is Jacques Mesrine, robber, kidnapper, murderer, serial evader, and public enemy number one. He is wanted by the police forces of France, Canada, Spain, and Switzerland. That man is also Jacques Mesrine, self-appointed rebel, one-man army against the corruption of the bourgeois state. A modern-day Robin Hood who only steals from the real thieves, banks, corporations, and casinos. An activist who has been campaigning against the harshness of high-security prisons. Whatever the truth about that man, one thing seems certain. This will probably be the last minute of his life. Jacques-René Mesrine was born on December 28, 1936, second child to Pierre and Monique, who were small-time entrepreneurs in the textile sector. The early years of Jacques, or Jackie as his father called him, are happy and uneventful until that spring of 1940 in which he, his family, and his country suffer the trauma of the German invasion. Pierre was captured and sent to a POW camp in Germany. Meanwhile, Monique and the children had to evacuate their house in Clichy, suburban Paris, and relocate to the countryside. Jackie spent the occupation years at a farm near Poitiers, owned by relatives. He soon found out that this farmer was a part of the resistance, and Jackie was allowed to attend the partisans' secret meetings at night. By day, he played soldier with his friends. It was in this environment that he developed a taste for guns. After D-Day, he witnessed resistance fighters ambushing a retreating German column not far from the farm. The following day, Jackie and his sister found a bloody, mangled corpse by the road. This was his first direct encounter with death, which actually didn't shock him at all. Some days later, he would experience another first. The partisans had rounded up some women accused of collaborating with the Germans, or sometimes just accused of being sexually or romantically involved with them. Their hair was shorn, their faces beaten. Jackie stared at one of them. A fighter had painted a swastika on her forehead. This woman became the target of the partisans' wrath. They hit her with the butt of their rifles, and they eventually killed her. In the process, her dress was ripped open. Mesrine later recalled this as his first experience with female nudity, and it was definitely more traumatic than the corpse he had seen a few days earlier. After the war was over, Jackie returned to Paris, happy to be rejoined by his father soon afterward. Some sense of normalcy had returned, but Jackie could not adapt to the daily routine of going to school after years of freedom at the farmhouse. He played truant most of the time, ignored homework, and became the boss of a gang of street urchins. By his teenage years, Jackie had been expelled from 2 high schools on one occasion for punching the headmaster. By the age of 15, Jackie's dad had wisely decided to get him an apprenticeship, as studying was certainly not his strong suit. Jackie worked for a couple of years at a fashion designer's workshop, even doing some errands for celebrities like Audrey Hepburn. At the same time, Jackie was staging his first burglaries with a friend. His favorite technique was to enter middle-class flats disguised as flower delivery boys. During this period, Jackie lost his virginity to an older woman, a prostitute named Sarah. In his memoirs, he admitted that upon seeing her undressed, he thought about the collaborationist woman who had been killed by the partisans. For 2 years, Jackie was smitten with Sarah, even trying to get her out of prostitution, but he eventually desisted. At the age of 18, he was too distracted, first by his criminal career and then by a young student from Martinique named Lydia de Souza. The two had met at a party at the Cité Universitaire in Paris. The sexual attraction had been strong and immediate. So, in 1955, at the age of 19, Jackie and Lydia got married. The wedding had been accelerated by the fact that Lydia was pregnant, but not with Jackie's child. Nonetheless, the young burglar acknowledged the child as his own. Probably not a great start for a relationship. In fact, Their marriage was an unhappy one. Lydia had frequent affairs, which got her the title of Saint Slut in Mesrine's memoirs. Jacques was unhappy. He took to the bottle and became physically abusive. He jumped at the occasion to leave it all behind when the French army conscripted him in 1956. The following year, the couple divorced and Jacques volunteered to serve in Algeria, training as a paratrooper and commando. Finally, his love of adventure, his passion for guns, and his simmering desire for violence would all be satisfied. At the time, the French military was waging a bitter, dirty war against the Algerian National Liberation Front, struggling for independence. Jacques, the boy, was no more. He was Jacques the soldier now. He volunteered for special anti-guerrilla actions and duties, which included some pretty dangerous combat missions. He also assisted the military police in torturing members of the Liberation Front, or even worse, executing them with a bullet to the head. In his memoirs, he admitted to holding a blind hatred towards Algerian fighters, though on one occasion he defied his sergeant's orders by releasing 3 Algerian prisoners. One of them, aged only 8, reminded him of his younger self in Nazi-occupied France. Throughout the Algerian period, Jacques lied to his parents, telling them that he had been stationed in an office away from combat. When he was demobbed in April 1959, his father was surprised to see a military cross for bravery pinned on his chest. Pierre Mesrine was dead proud of his son, but he also knew that the conflict was changing him. He later admitted that Jacques was never the same after returning from Algeria. Something had cracked inside him, and a new persona had emerged. Something that was dangerous. After Algeria, the return to civilian life bored Jacques to death. He craved adrenaline, whatever the source. Initially, Mesrine gravitated towards political violence and terrorism. By day, he worked as a textile salesman. By night, he frequented members of the OAS, Organization of the Secret Army. This group violently opposed President de Gaulle's policy to grant independence to Algeria, but Jacques' preference was for ordinary crime. He spent his nights committing small burglaries and playing poker. In this period, he partnered with an accomplice known as Guido the Sicilian, who would mentor him towards more serious crimes. In 1959, he was convicted of his first serious burglary in the flat of a wealthy businessman. As he was boring his way into a safe, his drill broke down. Jacques left, broke into a hardware store, stole another drill, and went back to finish the job. During the same period, he committed his first cold-blooded murder. On a night out with Guido, Jacques had run into Sarah, his old flame. There was a violent altercation with Sarah's new boyfriend and pimp, an Arab man named Ahmed. Jacques entered the fight by pistol whipping him. The morning after, Ahmed beat up Sarah, trying to extract Jacques' address from her. When Jacques and Guido found out, they kidnapped Ahmed and led him to the woods outside Paris. They stripped him naked, and then Jacques slowly stabbed him to death with his Algerian souvenir, a 15-centimeter dagger. Jacques was starting to build a reputation both in the underworld and among the police. In the summer of 1960, after yet another burglary, Jacques and 2 of his accomplices went to Spain to lay low. There they were settled in Tossa del Mar on the Costa Brava. One night, Jacques hooked up with a local girl, Maria Soledad. The two were an unlikely match. Jacques was brash, adventurous, a ladies' man. Soledad was shy, still under tight supervision from her parents, and a virgin. Well, at least until she had met Jacques. After the summer holidays, Jacques and his friends returned to their old habits in Paris. But this life was about to be abruptly interrupted when an unexpected visitor knocked at Jacques' door. It was Soledad. She had gotten pregnant during their affair. Defying her parents, she had left home to move in with Jacques in Paris. The two married on November 4th, 1961, and went on to have 3 children, Sabrina, Boris, and Bruno. Fatherhood did not deter Mesrine from crime. In January 1962, he was arrested on counts of burglary and carrying a concealed firearm, receiving an 18-month sentence. After serving his time, Jacques made a serious attempt to lead an honest life. He first joined an interior design firm as an apprentice, working hard and showing a real knack for architecture. It was a pity then that the firm made him redundant after less than a year. Next, Soledad's family tried to help by offering him a management position with a hotel in the north of France, but the establishment soon became a meeting spot for local criminals, and Monsieur Mesrine went back to his old habits. Around this period, he made an important discovery. It took very little to alter his likeness. A pair of glasses, a hat, a wig, a beard, just a single detail could make him unrecognizable. Mesrine would exploit this talent for future criminal endeavors. Meanwhile, Soledad patiently waited at home, unaware that her husband had developed a relationship with another woman, a prostitute called Jeanne Schneider, known as Jeannot. In time, Jacques became more than a lover to Mesrine. She was a second wife to him and an invaluable accomplice. He introduced her to his old mentor Guido and even to his father. Both gave their blessing to their relationship. One night, Jacques was hanging out at Mesrine's hotel when the bar was raided by a gang of thugs. Mesrine confronted the leader, knocking him out with a truncheon. Jacques, without missing a beat, unholstered a .38 handgun and kept the rest of the gang at bay. Apparently, these were two criminal souls who were just meant for each other. And let me tell you about something that was meant for you. Today's sponsor, Squarespace. Two simple things. Maybe you've got some idea for a website or a business or a podcast or something like that knocking around in your mind and you're like, well, should I do this? Well, the only way to figure out whether it's worth doing is to get it out there to the world. I know that can be daunting because it's scary to pursue new things, but not knowing how to set up a website is not an excuse. There are no excuses available with Squarespace. Squarespace allows you to create a powerful website for whatever you're up to. You want to sell something online? Yes. Set up a store with Squarespace. You want to do a podcast? Sure. Absolutely. Do it on Squarespace. It all starts on Squarespace with a beautiful template that you can customize to your heart's content, or you can start from scratch, or you can easily move over from an existing domain, making everything super easy to manage. Don't start from scratch. So take my advice, just use a template. They look awesome. Don't make excuses. And once you've gone through the super easy customization process, no updates, no patches, no tech BS to deal with. And Squarespace also handles all the website-y stuff, podcasts, sure, mailing lists, yes, social integrations, oh yes, and much, much more. Also 24/7 customer support. So head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Biographics to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. The next appointment in Mesrine's criminal resume is the most puzzling one. On the 2nd of December 1965, he was arrested in Palma de Mallorca in Spain, as he was trying to steal confidential documents from the office of the military governor. In his memoirs, Mesrine claims that this was a job somebody had commissioned Guido to do, the Sicilian, as well as him, but really, who knows? It's not clear. The Le Mans newspaper speculates that this job may have been linked to Mesrine's old days with the OAS, the anti-de Gaulle terrorists. In the mid-1960s, many former OAS members were hiding in Spain with protection from Francisco Franco's military. The Palma heist may have even been ordered by the DRM, French military intelligence, to retrieve a list of OAS subversives in exile. Mesrine the gangster as a government agent? An interesting theory supported by what happened next. After his arrest, Mesrine was transferred to the French embassy in Madrid, repatriated, and given a very lenient sentence. In October of 1966, Mesrine gave it another go at honesty and opened a restaurant in the Canary Islands. Soledad was with him to recover their relationship. The project failed miserably and the couple eventually divorced. In 1967, Jacques and Jacques became a permanent item in both life and in crime. In November, they first attracted the attention of the special squads of the French Judiciary Police. The two raided a luxury hotel in Chamonix in the Alps and briefly held a Tunisian businessman at ransom. After extorting a large sum, the two lived on the run for 3 months. With the police on their backs, Mesrine and Jacques decided to leave the country for good. On February the 6th, 1968, they took off from Orly Airport. Destination, Quebec. From February to June of 1968, the couple were employed as chauffeur and housekeeper by a Montreal millionaire, Georges Deslauriers. But after a rows with other staff, they were sacked. No job though, no problem. Mesrine and Jacques kidnapped the millionaire, asking for a $200,000 ransom. After cashing in the loot, the couple laid low for several months as guests of a widow who they befriended. The couple tried to escape to the US, but were caught in Arkansas and extradited to Canada on July the 16th, 1969. Jacques and Jacques were both incarcerated. They were charged with kidnapping the Montreal millionaire, but also with murdering their friend, the widow. Her body had been found on June the 30th, strangled. They were eventually acquitted of the murder, but the outrage at this charge prompted Mesrine to stage his first in a series of jailbreaks. On August the 17th, he managed to capture a prison warden. After stealing his uniform and keys, Jacques then proceeded to free his lover. Unfortunately for them, they were caught the very next day, and Mesrine was sent to a high-security prison, St. Vincent de Paul, in Laval, west of Ottawa. Mesrine now took his time to plan the next escape. Over the next 3 years, he recruited a team of 5 accomplices, and he created a secret stash of tools from the prison workshop. Finally, on August the 21st, 1972, Mesrine led his fellow inmates inmates in a daring escape, cutting through several fences with the tools he had stolen. Once outside the perimeter, the 6 escapees simply flagged down some cars and hitched a ride to freedom. Mesrine had now partnered with one of the escaped convicts, a violent gangster called Jean-Paul Mercier. Over the ensuing 10 days, the two attacked 3 banks, robbing them a total of 4 times. On the 26th of August, they held up 2 small-town banks 10 minutes apart from each other. On the 28th, they raided a bank in Montreal. As Mesrine did not like the defiant look from one of the cashiers, they returned 3 days later for a second heist. With their pockets full of cash and weapons, Mesrine and Mercier went one step further. On the 3rd of September, they attacked their old prison, St. Vincent, to free some of their old friends still inside. As they started the assault, they were caught between a rock and a hard place. Wardens were shooting from the prison walls, and 2 police cars arrived as reinforcements. Jacques and Jean-Paul unleashed an inferno of gunfire. Mesrine successfully hit the police car, severely wounding the 2 officers inside. Mercier kept the prison staff at bay until a bullet caught him in the leg. Outnumbered and almost out of ammo, the 2 jumped back in the car and sped off. Hounded by every police officer in Quebec, the duo sought refuge in the woods. For a week, they were undisturbed until they killed 2 forest guards who had mistaken them for poachers. And what of Jeannot in the interim? Well, she was still in jail, and Mesrine had made plans to spring her. But when Jacques informed her of his plan, she asked him not to follow through on it. Jeannot suspected that the police would lay a trap at her prison, and she didn't want him to get caught. Thus, Jeannot sacrificed her last chance to see Mesrine. The 2 would never meet again. Mesrine and Mercier continued their robbing spree throughout October, November, and December of 1972. The 2, especially Jacques, had become national celebrities in Canada, even if it came with a dark reputation for murder and violent heists. Along the way, Mesrine even picked up a groupie of sorts, Joyce Darache. This new lover followed him everywhere. When he eventually decided to flee from Canada and return to France, she followed him, hidden in his luggage. So, in 1973, Mesrine was back in France and up to his old tricks. On March the 5th, he wounded a police officer after a violent quarrel with a cashier at a bar, a mistake that would cost him his freedom. He was arrested on the 8th and scheduled to appear before a judge months later, on June the 6th, at the courthouse in Compiègne, northwest of Paris. As his charges were being read, Mesrine produced a gun stuffed in his belt. He had retrieved it from the toilets where an accomplice had left it for him. This was Mesrine at his most brazen. He held the judge at gunpoint, and using him as a human shield, he walked free of the tribunal. That's the moment when Mesrine the gangster became a celebrity, a household name. It's also when authorities declared him public enemy number 1. The Ministry of the Interior created a special squad headed by a commissaire, or chief inspector, Robert Broussard. Jacques had found his nemesis. Broussard and his colleagues had a great opportunity to catch Mesrine in September of 1973. On the 28th, the gangster performed his signature move, a double-armed robbery of 2 adjacent banks. Mesrine and his gang made their getaway, pockets loaded with cash. But it was a close call. The police arrived in force and managed to arrest one of the gang's drivers. The squad pressured the driver until they had an address. The day after, Broussard's squad surrounded Mesrine's flat and forced him to surrender. Jacques Mesrine was again behind bars, and they weren't keeping him at just any old jail. He was sentenced to spend a term of 20 years inside the high-security wing of La Santé prison. This was a harsh institution placed in the heart of Paris and plagued by overcrowding, sexual violence, and unsanitary conditions. During the following 5 years at La Santé, Mesrine created a new public persona for himself. Jacques the gangster became Jacques the gentleman robber, who only struck at the rich and powerful, but never harmed the little guy in the street. He became Jacques the activist, who criticized the corruption of the government and the inhumane conditions of the QHS. These were the high-security wings in which convicts rotted in solitary confinement. As such, Mesrine became a darling of the media and the ultra-left. Mesrine also took the time to write his autobiography, Instinct of Death. In the book, he re-emphasized how many of his actions were ideologically motivated, although he admitted that his pursuit of a life of crime was tied to his love of risk and adrenaline. This is why he defined himself as a kamikaze of crime. He also claimed to have killed 39 people, which was probably an exaggeration, but he did offer very precise details on some of these murders. Instinct of Death, of course, was published prior to one of the most spectacular chapters of Mesrine's life, his escape from La Santé. Mesrine's time in QHS was not as harsh as he depicted. He could count on the friendship of many convicts and even wardens who would smuggle cigars and other luxury goods in for him. One of these wardens offered to help Mesrine escape from La Santé. The man took several duplicates of the keys to the prison cells and smuggled them to Mesrine, along with 2 handguns, tear gas canisters, pincers, a mountaineering rope, and a grappling hook. Mesrine and his accomplice stashed the items inside the ventilation system of the consultation rooms designed for lawyers to meet with their convict clients. To protect them, them from humidity, he wrapped each object with socks and rubber gloves. And now we come to the time of the 8th of May 1978. Mesrine is taken by guards into a consultation room to meet his lawyer. As soon as they are alone, he orders her to stay silent, and then he retrieves his tool from the aeration vent. Guns in hand, Mesrine quickly holds up some of the guards. One of them is the deputy chief warden. Mesrine strips him naked and wears his uniform. Now the gangster locks them all up inside the consultation room, then proceeds to free 2 more convicts, Francois Besset and Carmen Reeves. The trio lower themselves into a courtyard with the climbing rope. They are expecting to see only fellow inmates, but they stumble upon a group of guards and building contractors. Mesrine holds them at gunpoint, and the trio moves on to clear the next obstacle, the perimeter wall. On the walkway atop the wall, a guard is keeping watch with a rifle. Mesrine incapacitates him with tear gas and then grabs his gun. All the guards are now on alert and they're firing against them. Mesrine exchanges gunfire with the guards as Besset lowers himself onto the street outside the prison. The bandit then hands over the rifle to Reeves. It's his time to climb down to freedom too. Reeves is next, but he loses his grip on the climbing rope and crashes into some scaffolding 7 meters below, which is a bad fall, but he makes it out alive. Now police reinforcements have arrived. As Reeves tries to stand up, an officer shoots him, killing him instantly. Mesrine is ready to fire back, but his gun jams. This ultimately aids his escape. The police, seeing his uniform, are confused and hesitate to shoot back. Seizing the moment, Mesrine and Besset stop a passing car, shoving the driver out, and they speed off. This was the first ever successful escape from La Sante. Mesrine was dangerously close, though, to becoming a legend. After such a feat, any gangster would lie low and stay quiet for a while, but Mesrine was not just any gangster. On July the 27th, 1979, popular magazine Paris Match published a sensational interview with Mesrine, recorded some time after his escape. In the interview, Mesrine acknowledged his respect for Chief Inspector Broussard, issuing the warning that he would not be caught alive the next time. Surprisingly, the gangster also admitted to further crimes, giving very precise details. For example, on May the 26th, 1978, Mesrine and an accomplice had stolen 13 million francs from the Casino Deauville in Normandy. As he put it, attacking a casino is to attack the empire of vice. The only way to beat the house is to go with a gun. Mesrine and friends had barely made it out alive after being chased and shot at by police on foot, in car, and from a helicopter. After spending some days in the woods of Normandy, Mesrine baffled the police once again and prepared the next heist against a branch of Banque Société Générale. This was not a random choice. The general director of this bank had sued Mesrine for slander following the publication of his book, Instinct of Death. When Mesrine was forced to pay damages, he wrote to the director, "You are taking all my money. That's okay, but consider this to be a loan." On January 3rd, 1979, another interview emerged, this time published by Liberation. Here he gave details of his attempted kidnapping of Charles Petit in November of 1978. This was the judge who had sent him to La Sante. Mesrine raided the judge's flat, but Petit was not there. Enraged, Mesrine sprayed the judge's family with tear gas and left the flat. The apartment block had been surrounded by police, but the gangster escaped by taking another officer hostage. Mesrine's reputation with the press was not always so cordial. In September of 1979, ex-policeman and journalist Jacques accused Mesrine of being a dishonorable crook who betrayed his accomplices. Mesrine was livid. He invited Tillier to a remote cave for an exclusive interview, and the journalist fell into the trap. Mesrine tortured him and shot him 3 times. Specifically, he shot him in the face to stop him talking crap, he shot him in the arm to stop him writing crap, and he shot him in the leg just for the pleasure of it. But fortunately, he survived. All the criminal activity, the interviews, the confirmations, and the successful escapes were an embarrassment for the police and the government. Inspector Broussard, alongside his new deputy, Balistrazi, were often close to finding Mesrine, but they were always one step behind. Then at the end of October 1979, Broussard and Balistrazi received a tip-off. Mesrine was living with his new girlfriend, barmaid Sylvia Jacques, in the Porte de Segoncourt area. The detectives assembled a team of 50 officers and 15 vehicles and prepared a plan of action. They would take Mesrine by surprise inside his car by blocking him at the front and rear with 2 trucks. Broussard got authorization from his supervising magistrate to act in a state of permanent self-defense. This allowed maximum force reaction due to the danger posed by Mesrine. And now it's November 2nd, 1979, the Day of the Dead. At 3:15 p.m., Mesrine pulls out from his parking spot, but a truck with a blue tarpaulin blocks the way. Then the tarpaulin flies open and 3 men armed with assault rifles jump out. Mesrine immediately ducks, probably reaching for the hand grenades, but the seatbelt blocks his movements. Instinctively, all 3 men open fire, piercing the windshield with 21 rounds. Sylvia is severely injured and will lose an eye. Jacques Mesrine, public enemy number 1, dies on the spot. As predicted, he wouldn't be caught alive again. The police operation and its aftermath remained controversial. Broussard and his men were seen drinking champagne by the corpse, and hours later even offered a glass to Mesrine's daughter. The controversy fueled the rhetoric of those who saw Mesrine as a sort of folk hero. But should he really be remembered as such? I'll only quote his spiritual testaments, which he recorded for Sylvia to listen to after his death. "What is terrible is that some will try to make a hero out of me, but after all, there are no heroes in crime. There are only men who are marginalized, who do not accept laws, because laws are made by the rich and the powerful." So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, please do check out our fantastic sponsor, Squarespace, linked to below. Thank you for watching.